They set her up, mocked her openly, and figured she was finished for good, until she strode back in as their new superior. They didn't even wait for the corridor to empty. For uniformed cops, one's Carla Grayson, now 47, had once guided as rookies, burst into her office on a Thursday. Hands poised on their cuffs like they'd practiced it all morning. One barked too loudly. "Carla Grayson, you're under arrest for evidence tampering, obstruction, and misuse of power." No warrant, no details, just icy glares and a news crew lurking outside. It felt staged, like a performance. She didn't fight, didn't yell, didn't even question it. She locked eyes with Officer Jake Tanner, 32, who couldn't mask the grin creeping across his face, then rose calmly, hands extended. "Let's go," she said. They marched her through the 9th District Precinct in Eugene, Oregon, like a felon. Her badge still hung at her waist, her sidearm holstered. The desk sergeant looked away. A young cop she'd trained in marksmanship avoided her gaze. Everyone knew something, nobody spoke. Rumors had been brewing, some even stoked by her own colleagues. She'd served 25 years, spotless record, awards, big cases, no blemishes. Now, out of nowhere, she was a liability. Outside, reporters swarmed like flies. Carla kept her head high, hearing their shouts. "Did you swipe drugs from evidence? Are you talking to investigators?" She stayed silent, climbed into the cruiser. This arrest wasn't about right or wrong. It was a signal, and she got it loud and clear. They wanted her gone, and they weren't subtle about it. Jake Tanner slid into the back seat beside her, against protocol, but rules were out the window now. He leaned in, his breath reeking of burnt coffee. "You should have stayed out of it, Grayson," he hissed. "Look where it got you." She didn't waver. "I've never feared shadows," she murmured. "I just see through them better than you." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. At the station, they printed her, snapped her photo, and locked her in a cell for 6 hours. Her lawyer didn't get in until hour 4, planned that way. The delay gave the media time to spin their tales, let the rumors blaze. By the time her attorney, Leonard Marsh, 53, sat across from her in that metal chair, she was already front-page news. "They've locked your file," he said, voice low. "Nothing's official yet, but this reeks. Internal affairs isn't even involved. It's straight from the district's top." She exhaled, steady. "You think it's Tanner?" Leonard nodded. "Him and others. It's a setup. You rattled something big, and they're terrified you'll unearth it." She stared ahead, calm, not surprised. She'd sensed it for months. Files vanishing, cases rerouted, evidence logs altered. When she'd pushed, they called her paranoid. Now they'd shown their hand. Honesty was a liability. She wasn't shaken, just quiet. This wasn't only about her. Victims were out there, their cases buried, their trust betrayed because the wrong people held power. If she was sinking, she'd drag them down too. After 6 hours, they cut her loose. No charges, no apology, just a pending review file, and a precinct full of eyes treating her like she'd already confessed. She didn't speak as she left, but in the parking lot, she made one call, not to kin, not to reporters, but to the mayor. "We need to talk," she said, voice firm. "Everything on the table." Then she went quiet. No calls returned, no posts, no trace. For a week, she was a ghost. At the 9th District, that was a relief. Cops acted like it never happened. Jake Tanner cracked jokes in the break room, smirking. Maybe she finally got she doesn't belong. Powdered sugar dusted his shirt as he laughed. The laughter trailed him, not genuine but forced, born of fear. Captain Victor Hensley, 58, who'd greenlit her arrest, shrugged it off as procedure, but his quick climb up the ladder wasn't a secret. Carla had been one of the few bold enough to question it. Without her, the air lightened, less scrutiny, fewer challenges. Tanner and his buddies grew cocky, ditching shifts early, pushing calls to newbies. Reports went missing, interviews flubbed, small slips the public wouldn't catch. Carla had always noticed. Now no one stepped into that void. They got sloppy, assuming victory. But whispers stirred beyond the precinct. A bartender at Winston's Tavern caught 2 city clerks muttering about a hushed city hall meeting, something federal. Another tale placed Carla in Salem, entering the Department of Justice. Unconfirmed, but it rattled some nerves. Detective Laura Voss, 39, who'd served under Carla for 5 years, didn't join the break room chuckles. She kept quiet, worked her cases, avoided the gossip. Deep down, she felt the wrongness. One day, she caught Tanner rifling through her desk files. "Didn't know this was your beat," he said, eyes fixed on the folder. "It's not," she shot back. "The witness asked for me." He looked up, slow, shutting the file. "Careful, Voss. You don't want to end up like Grayson." She didn't reply, just snatched the file and left. Her gut churned. That night, she dug into old texts, finding Carla's last message, sent 2 days before the arrest. If anything goes down, don't trust Tanner. Dig into the Carver case. It's not just missing drugs. Start there. The Carver case, labeled a dead-end overdose, closed fast. Carla had flagged inconsistencies. Timelines off, statements shaky, evidence chain broken. Lara had dropped it then, now she doubted that choice. Meanwhile, Carla had holed up in a Corvallis rental under an alias. No photos, no tracks, just space to think. She wasn't running, she was plotting. A tech outfit she'd helped once repaid her with a database of buried internal affairs records, cases reclassified, erased, or ignored. She wasn't after her badge anymore, she was after the truth. What she uncovered wasn't just sloppiness, it was a system. Names popped up repeatedly. Tanner, Officer Miles Kenton, 29, Sergeant Paul Darrow, 44, even Captain Hensley. A web of brutality, lost evidence, and silenced witnesses, scattered across case numbers and buried in red tape. Dozens of victims, some cases shut in hours, others wiped clean. She printed it all, names, dates, complaints, then highlighted 27 overlaps. This was bigger than her now. It was about dismantling a machine that shielded the guilty in uniform, and she was ready to strike. Back at the precinct, they eased up, prepping for a celebration. The mayor's office sat on the 4th floor of a drab government building by the riverfront, unassuming, flanked by a bail bonds joint and a dentist. But behind its frosted doors, tension brewed. Mayor Diane Kessler, 61, had known Carla for decades. They'd clashed, but respect held. Diane had seen Carla clear a drug strip on 8th Street without a shot, talk down chaos with steady words. When Carla called for 10 minutes, Diane freed her whole day. Carla didn't mince words. "I need a federal probe into the 9th District," she said, dropping a folder on Diane's desk. "This has been festering under you." Diane flipped through names, photos, records. One report, a woman jaw bruised, her assault dismissed. Another, a body cam log cut off mid-arrest. Carla had tagged every anomaly, dated, color-coded, verified. "This many?" Diane asked, stunned. "Just what I could prove," Carla replied. "There's more." Diane pressed her fingers to her temples. "Why didn't I see this?" She was shaken. "They never reached you," Carla explained. "Reports got diverted, blocked. Ghost logins kept internal affairs blind, by design." Diane tapped the folder. "You want to lead this?" "No," Carla said. "I want access, records, audits, archives. Give me oversight. I'll hand you a clean department, but I work from inside." Diane leaned back, weighing it. "You know what this means?" "Yeah," Carla said. "They'll come for me again. I'm not running." 3 days later, a federal contact was assigned. The city council voted behind closed doors. Carla was back, quietly with power. She was reinstated as Internal Affairs Commander, armed with a federal mandate to oversee the 9th District's conduct. No fanfare, just a badge and a mission. Meanwhile, Tanner and his crew planned drinks, celebrating what they thought was a dodged bullet. Charges against Carla had fizzled, and they saw it as the city folding. Captain Hensley joined, casual in jeans, pouring beers like it was a win. Lara stayed home, digging into Carver, 7 minutes of missing body cam footage from Officer Kenton's logs. She smelled a cover-up brewing. Lara sent a tech request, then risked it all, emailed Carla. "I believe you. Carver's dirty. I can prove it. Let me help." 20 minutes later, Carla replied. "Monday. Neutral spot. Alone." The meet was set, an old library east side, shut down years ago. Lara arrived early, palms sweaty, pulse racing. Carla was already there, pacing, papers in hand. She turned, saw Lara, and gave a small smile, not vengeful, but relieved, like she'd found a partner worth betting on. They had 2 hours to unravel a rotting system. Lara brought printouts, timelines, statements. Carla spread out her corruption map, 7 years of filth. It wasn't just screw-ups, it was a deliberate shield. They traced names, dates, buried cases. The precinct, though, was clueless, still joking over donuts when the courtroom doors swung open. Tanner's pre-hearing was a formality, paperwork to close Carla's case. He strolled in smug, Hensley and 2 pals at his side. Lara watched from the back, silent, tracking every move. Then came the twist no one saw coming, Carla's shadow in the doorway. She stepped in, sharp in a black suit, new badge shining. Wordless, she handed the judge a sealed note. He read it, peered over his glasses. "Let it be noted, Carla Grayson is now Internal Affairs Commander, under federal authority, overseeing the Ninth District. The room buzzed. Hensley shot up. Your Honor, we weren't told. Not your call, the judge cut in. Mayor and DOJ invoked Title 18. She's here to watch and review. Tanner's face drained. Carla's gaze swept the room, landing on her old escorts. She stepped toward them, voice even. Morning, gentlemen. I'll be handling all complaints, audits, and reviews here. Paperwork in order? No one smirked. Silence choked the air. Tanner fumbled through testimony, voice breaking, hands restless. When it ended, Laura caught Carla in the hall. You didn't warn me, she said. Couldn't, Carla replied. Not till it was solid. Laura nodded. They'll freak. Good, Carla said. Panic breeds slip-ups. Back at the precinct, whispers spread, phones wiped, screens dimmed as she passed. Hensley called a shaky meeting, damage control failing fast. Trust and discipline keep us going, he stammered, dodging her stare. No one bought it. Carla took her new office, cramped, dim, once a file dump. She hauled in a lamp, a chair, taped up a line. If they hid it from you, they knew it was wrong. By dusk, she'd pulled 10 cases, stamped inactive, tied to names she'd flagged. She copied them, called Laura. Tomorrow, we start interviews. But that night, an officer bolted early, racing to Tanner's place with a heads up. Carla was closing in, and fast. Tanner stood by his window in West Eugene, gripping a chipped mug, watching cars roll by. He'd clammed up since court, not to his wife, not to Hensley. Now Miles Kenton, 29, slipped in, door half shut. She's got Carver, he whispered. It's in her office. Tanner stared ahead. And Voss? She's with her. They've got tech logs, too. Tanner's mug cracked under his grip. Damn it. Kenton fidgeted. We gotta act. No, Tanner said. Not yet. Push too soon, we look desperate. Let her think she's winning. Sweat beaded on his brow, though he was rattled. Next morning, Carla rolled in before dawn, parked out back, and glided past the break room. 3 cops froze mid-chat. Her presence rewired the place. No lounging, no laughs. Every move she made sparked a twitch. She pinned a list to the board. Mandatory interviews, Week 1, Kenton, Detective Amy Lorne, Lieutenant Greg Tatum Tanner. Times set, signatures required, no dodging. By 9 a.m., the precinct hummed like a disturbed hive. She'd poked it, and they were buzzing. Carla Grayson entered, spine rigid, black suit crisp, new badge glinting. She said nothing at first, just approached the judge's bench and slid over a sealed envelope. He scanned it, adjusted his glasses, then addressed the room. As of this morning, Carla Grayson is Internal Affairs Commander, federally mandated, with authority over the Ninth District. Whispers erupted. Captain Victor Hensley, 58, lurched forward. Your Honor, the judge cut him off. Mayor and DOJ invoked emergency powers. She's observing testimony and starting her review. Jake Tanner's smirk vanished. Carla turned, deliberate, eyes sweeping until they locked on the officers who'd hauled her out weeks ago. Good morning, she said, calm as steel. I oversee every complaint, audit, and review here. Hope your records are tight. The room went still, air thick with dread. No one chuckled. During testimony, Tanner sat rigid, voice faltering, hands twitching like he couldn't settle them. When it wrapped, Carla stepped into the hall alone. Laura Voss, 39, trailed her. No heads up, Laura asked. Had to be airtight, Carla said. They'll slip now. Back at the precinct, the vibe shifted. Corners buzzed, phones erased, screens blanked as she passed. Hensley called an urgent meeting, voice wobbling. We run on trust and discipline, he said, avoiding her gaze. Stay professional through this. A snort echoed from the back. No one pushed further. Carla settled into her office, windowless, cluttered, once a storage pit. She didn't mind. She set up a lamp, her chair, and pinned a note above her desk. If they feared you seeing it, they knew it was dirty. By dusk, she'd pulled her first cases. She yanked 10 files, labeled dormant, linked to names she'd marked. Tanner, Kenton, Darrow, Hensley. She duplicated them, then dialed Laura. Interviews start tomorrow. But before night's end, Officer Miles Kenton, 29, peeled out early, speeding to Tanner's house with a tip. Tanner stood by his window, mug in hand, staring at headlights slicing the dark. He'd gone quiet since court, no words to his wife, his lawyer, or Hensley. Kenton slipped in, breathless. She's got Carver in her office. Voss too. Tech logs included. Tanner's grip tightened. The mug split, coffee dripping. Damn it, he muttered. Kenton shifted, antsy. We need a move. Not yet, Tanner snapped. Rush it, we look guilty. Let her sweat us. But he was sweating, temples slick, collar damp. Next morning, Carla arrived before sunrise, parked in the side lot, and breezed past the break room. 3 cops clammed up mid-sentence. Her presence jolted the place. No slacking, no chatter. She posted her list. Week 1 interviews. Kenton, Amy Lorne, Greg Tatum, Tanner. Times locked, signatures mandatory, no outs. By 9 a.m., the precinct thrummed like a kicked nest. First up, Kenton. She brought him in, shut the door soft, offered water. He declined. March 12th, 3 years back, Carver scene, she said. Your body cam ran 7 minutes. Where's the footage? Kenton stumbled. It should have uploaded. Maybe a glitch. Tech guy was supposed to fix it. She leaned in, hands clasped. One shot at the truth. If you're hiding a cover-up, that badge won't save you. His eyes flicked sideways, searching for an escape that wasn't there. He was alive when I got there, Kenton mumbled, voice low. Carver breathing. I called it in, but Tanner said skip the log. Said it'd mess things up. Meaning what? Carla pressed. Didn't explain, just said he was a junkie, case closed. Told me to ditch the clip. She didn't flinch, just jotted it down. Will you swear to that? Kenton swallowed, nodded. Yeah. She dismissed him without a word. That night, she typed his statement, sent it to the federal contact. Not enough for cuffs yet, but Tanner's leash was shortening. At home, Tanner unraveled, skipping meals, sleepless, phoning old contacts for favors, immunity, anything. Too late. The precinct cracked too. A rookie, Darnell Pitts, 26, slipped a USB into Carla's inbox, no note. It held audio. Tanner, 2 years back, strong-arming a witness off record. Unreported until now. She looped it 10 minutes, jaw set. This wasn't hunch anymore, it was evidence, piling fast. But someone fought back, not with files. Next morning, her car's tail light was smashed, rear corner dented, no cameras, no note. A warning she didn't report. She fixed the bulb herself, drove in early, and bumped Tanner's Friday interview to Wednesday. She knew his style, the damage was his mark. If he thought it'd scare her, he'd misjudged her steel. At 9:10 a.m., he sauntered in, polo shirt, hands pocketed, feigning ease. Pulled me off patrol for this, he said. You're off patrol, she replied, eyes down. Desk duty, effective yesterday, pending review. His grin flickered. Power trip, huh? She slid a transcript over, him pressuring a witness, Olivia Ray, February 9th, 2021, off-site. Recognize this? Tanner didn't touch it. You're scraping junk to build a case, he sneered. You're not a cop now, just a grudge with legs. Her tone stayed flat. You don't get it. You think your crew's got your back, but they'll turn. You'll stand alone. He leaned in, cuffs glinting. You're not invincible. We dropped you once. She met his stare. Your error, leaving me alive. He stood, slammed the door on his way out, rattling her files. That night, Laura burst in with 2 fat folders, Darrow and Hensley. Smoking gun, Laura said, dropping them. 1. Sergeant Paul Darrow, 44, signed 6 memos clashing with dispatch, fake arrests. The other, Hensley greenlit them, no follow-up, his name on every sheet. This wasn't random, Laura said, rubbing her brow. They ran a shield, arrests that never hit court, suspects gone. It's here. Carla leaned back, hands tented. How many knew? 6, maybe more, Laura said. But 3 called shots. They both knew Tanner, Darrow, Hensley. The rest were fraying. Kenton lawyered up. 2 cops bailed sick. Carla stayed late, printing reports, labeling folders, building a timeline with Laura, earliest dirt to latest. At 1:17 a.m., a blocked text hit. Stop digging. You're making foes. She flipped the phone down, too late for threats. But Thursday flipped the script. Laura rushed in pale. Kenton's in the lot, beat up. Says he was jumped. Carla bolted, Laura behind, downstairs into the rain-soaked lot. Kenton slumped by a divider, lip busted, eye swelling, sleeve shredded. They warned me, he rasped. Said shut up or else. Carla crouched, steady. Who? She asked. He shook his head. Masks. One had a gold bracelet, Darrow's kind. She glanced at Laura, no need to speak. By dusk, the DOJ liaison knew. Assaulting a witness on precinct ground tipped it. Codes froze, badge logs tracked, and Mayor Diane Kessler, 61, raging, ordered a public audit. Carla faced Hensley in a stark conference room, evidence stacked. Your signatures, she said, tapping papers. Fake arrests, rerouted memos. Blind or in on it. Hensley puffed up, then deflated. Pressure, budgets, public heat. Choices were made. Choices? She snapped. You crushed trust. He caved, agreed to resign, and talked for leniency, no immunity, just a lifeline. She took his statement. Meanwhile, Lara tied Carver to falsified logs and lost footage, overnight, fueled by coffee and grit. By Friday, warrants dropped. Tanner got nabbed mid-bite at a deli, pastrami in hand, marshals swarming. He froze, stunned. Darrow's door was smashed pre-dawn. He ran, didn't get far. 6 more fell in 24 hours, 2 patrolmen, a lieutenant, a clerk, all webbed in. The news exploded. Corruption scandal guts 9th District. They blared, betrayal, collapse. Carla didn't care about headlines. She stood in the hall that Friday, watching state cars circle the precinct she'd been dragged from. Officers shuffled out in cuffs past lockers that hid their deceit. She didn't gloat, just paced slow, pausing at the squad room door. Inside went hushed. Some helped this rot, she said, scanning faces. Some didn't. But you all let it grow. Ignoring it fed it. She let it sink in, heavy as the silence that followed. Now if you lie, you're out, she continued. Cover up, you're gone. Abuse the badge, you leave without it. That's the line, not a warning, a fact. Order crept back, justice taking hold. But Carla had one stop left. Late that day, she walked the county jail's dim hall, folder tucked under her arm, past flickering lights to the holding area. Here for Jake Tanner, she told the deputy. He eyed her, buzzed her in. Tanner sat behind glass, cuffed, orange scrubs dulling his old swagger. He looked worn, paler, older, jaw bruised from the takedown. Didn't expect you, he said, quiet. Not here for you, she replied. For the truth. He sneered. Think this makes you a saint? No, she said, sharp. It makes you a lesson. He leaned in, cuffs clinking. I didn't invent this. Others played too. Sure, she said. But you loved it most. Silence stretched. You could have stayed low, he muttered. Had respect, rank, captain someday. And let you taint it? She shot back. Pass. He looked away, deflated. She stood, tapped the folder on the glass. Every file, every name you touched, I keep it not for spite, but to remember why I stay. She left without a glance. Outside, dusk sliced the lot, quiet, final. Back at her office, Lara waited with coffee and fresh files. Round 2. Lara asked. Carla exhaled. Not yet. Soon. They sat, sifting complaints from other districts, new names, new fights. The job never quit, but now it mattered. She pinned Carver's photo up, note beneath. Ask anyway. That night, she drove past city lines, just her, the road, and thoughts of victims, their cases smothered, voices lost. She recalled her rookie self, 27, eager, badge shining, not knowing silence could weigh so much. Integrity wasn't loud, didn't grab trophies or airtime. It walked into a den of foes and worked anyway. Carla didn't return for payback. She came to prove justice lived if someone fought for it. Subscribe if this hit you. Stories like hers matter, not just for the cracks they show, but the fight they ignite. Thursday jolted everything. A civilian got jumped outside the precinct. Carla was mid-file when Lara burst in. It's Kenton, parking lot, bleeding. Says he was attacked. They raced out, rain slicking the stairs, to find him slumped, face split, eye shut, sleeve dangling. They warned me, he croaked. Said keep quiet. Carla knelt, firm. Who? Masks, he said. One had Darrow's bracelet. By night, the DOJ was on it. Assault on precinct turf flipped the switch. Codes locked, logs traced, and the mayor unleashed a full audit. Carla sat across Hensley, evidence piled high. Your approvals, she said, tapping sheets. Fake arrests, buried memos, clueless or complicit? He tried bravado, then folded. Pressure cuts, backlash. Had to keep it rolling. You ran over people, she countered. He agreed to step down, spill for a deal. Not freedom, just less jail. She logged it. Lara linked Carver to doctored logs, lost clips, worked all night, wired on coffee. By Friday, they were set. Warrants hit before noon. Tanner nabbed mid-lunch. Darrow caught at dawn. 6 more swept up fast. News screamed. 9th District corruption unmasked. Carla watched the hall Friday afternoon. Cuffs clinked past lockers of lies. She didn't smirk, just stopped at the squad room. Some fueled this, she said. Some didn't. But you let it fester. That ends now, lie, cover, abuse, you're out. Justice rooted, but she had one last face-off pending. If this story struck you, subscribe. It's not just broken systems, it's the fight worth having. Carla's war wasn't loud, but it echoed where it counted most. By Friday morning, arrest warrants landed hard. Jake Tanner, 32, got yanked from his car outside a deli, pastrami still in his mouth as marshals swarmed. He didn't resist, just gaped, like it was a bad dream turning real. Sergeant Paul Darrow, 44, fared worse. His door splintered at dawn, wife shrieking as he bolted, caught blocks away. 6 others dropped in the next day. 2 beat cops, a lieutenant, a records clerk, all knotted in the cover-up. Evening news flared. 9th District corruption exposed, words like betrayal ringing loud. Pundits tore into it, but Carla Grayson, 47, ignored the noise. She stood in the precinct hall that Friday, watching state cars circle the place she'd been paraded out of in cuffs. Officers shuffled past, wrists bound, by lockers that once hid their secrets. She didn't grin or crow, just paced slow, stopping at the squad room door. Inside, chatter died. Some built this mess, she said, eyes roving. Some didn't. But you all let it spread. Silence grew it. Her voice hung, heavy, unyielding. From here out, she pressed, lie you're done. Shield anyone, you're out. Misuse the badge, it's gone before you leave. That's the rule, not a threat, a guarantee. Order settled, justice digging in. But Carla had one last visit. End of day, she walked the county jail's quiet hall, folder under arm, past humming vending machines and dim lights to the holding block. Here for Jake Tanner, she told the deputy. He stared, then buzzed her through. Tanner sat behind glass, cuffed, a shadow of his old strut. Orange scrubs dulled him, paler, aged, jaw scuffed from the takedown. Didn't think you'd show, he said, voice soft. Not for you, she replied. For what's true? He snorted. This your hero moment? No, she said, cold. Your cautionary tale. He leaned forward, cuff scraping. I wasn't alone in this. Maybe, she said. But you savored it most. Silence stretched long. You had it all, he muttered. Respect, a shot at Captain. Why push? To stop rot like you, she answered. He turned away, words spent. She rose, tapped the folder on the glass. Every file, every name you stained. I hold it not for spite, but to know why I stay. For the kid who thinks cops still protect. He didn't speak. She walked out, eyes forward. Outside, late light cut the pavement, calm finished. Back at her office, Laura Voss, 39, waited with coffee and new files. Ready for more? Laura asked. Carla breathed deep. Not yet. Soon. They sat, combing other precincts' complaints, fresh names, fresh battles. The work rolled on, purposeful now. She tacked a photo of Carver to her board, note below. Ask anyway. That night, she drove beyond city edges, just her and the asphalt. She thought of victims, their cases choked out, voices muted by the wrong hands. She saw her younger self, 24, badge new, pride bright, not grasping how silence could crush. Carrying that load, never breaking, meant something. Integrity didn't shout or chase praise. It walked into hostile rooms and stood firm. Carla didn't reclaim her place for vengeance. She did it to prove justice needed a fighter. If this hit you, subscribe. Stories like hers matter, not just for the ruin they reveal, but the grit they demand. Carla's war wasn't loud, no headlines defined it. It was quiet resolve, the kind that outlasts. She'd faced a precinct of foes and reshaped it, not for glory, but for those still believing in the badge. Back then, she'd been dragged out. Now she'd walked back in, their boss. That shift wasn't luck. It was her refusing to bend, a reminder that truth wins when someone dares to chase it. Her fight echoed beyond Eugene's 9th District. Victims' names stayed with her, Carver's among them, pushing her to dig where others wouldn't. She'd turned a rigged game into a reckoning, not with noise, but with steady hands. Laura joined her, 2 cups steaming, as they mapped the next moves. The road stretched long, but Carla knew its weight. Justice wasn't a gift, it was carved out. And she'd keep carving for the silenced, for the trust still worth saving, until the job was done or she couldn't stand anymore. Out there, past the limits, she drove alone, thinking of what held her up. Not anger, not pride, but the stubborn choice to ask, to fight, to care. She'd faced the dark and mapped it, not for herself, but for those caught in it. That's what lasted, quiet, unyielding, real. Carla didn't need the last word, her work spoke it. If you felt this, stick around. Stories like these don't just break things open. They show what's worth building back, piece by hard-won piece. Carla Grayson's war in Eugene's 9th District wasn't just a clash of badges. It was a gut-punch lesson in grit and truth. First, integrity's a blade you wield alone, sharp and unyielding. At 47, after 25 years on the force, she faced a precinct of snakes. Jake Tanner's smirk, Victor Hensley's shaky excuses, Miles Kenton stammered confessions and didn't flinch. They framed her, dragged her out in cuffs, her badge still clipped to her hip, 6 miles from the mayor's office where she'd later strike back. She could have bowed out, taken the quiet road past city limits, but she stormed back as their boss, eyes blazing, pinning Carver's photo to her board with a scrawled "Ask Anyway." That's the takeaway. Real honor doesn't bend, even when the air's thick with betrayal and the odds tower 27 cases high. Second, justice isn't a gift, it's a brawl you win bloody. Tanner got nabbed mid-bite, pastrami dripping, marshals swarming a deli 2 blocks from the precinct he'd poisoned. Darrow's door splintered at dawn, his wife's screams echoing 300 yards down a sleepy street. Carla didn't just sit in her dim office, lamp flickering over files. She dug, mapped a web of lies stretching 7 years back, and faced Tanner behind glass, his orange scrubs a faded echo of his swagger. She taught us you don't wait for right to land. You chase it, fists up, through rain-slick lots and hushed halls, past every smashed tail light meant to scare you off. In America, where trust in the badge phrase, her story roars. Stand tall, swing hard, and never let the rot win. Not for the silenced, not for the kid 10 miles out who still believes. What would you do if you uncovered corruption right under your nose, like Carla Grayson did in the 9th District? Fight back or walk away? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more gripping stories of grit and justice. Every week, we dive into tales that inspire, challenge, and deliver real value. Don't miss out.